Okay, so let's talk now a little bit about the different types of organizations that actually produce shows. There are four basic types. Surprisingly, 90% of all the theater, I'm going out on a limb here, about 90% of all theater done in the US is done by non-professional organizations, people who are not making a living at it. It doesn't mean that it's amateurish and not good, it simply means that people do not earn their living by doing it. And of course, there are many organizations that are fully professional, and then there are hybrids. When people think of theater, probably the first thing they think about is Broadway. They think of the commercial theater. What's the purpose of a commercial activity? It's to make money. The biggest known, probably the two most prolific producing organizations that are commercial are Broadway and Broadway Tours. There are all kinds of organizations that are fully professional that exist to make money, but those are probably the two most common. The goal for a for a commercial organization, theatrical organization, is to make money. So the goal is to get a hit and have it run for a long time. When you invest in a play, the longer it can run, the longer your investment can make money, and the more time you have to make your money back. Incidentally, the National Trade Organization, I don't know what it is, the company, the regulating agency that regulates the stock market, does not allow people under a certain income to invest in Broadway shows because they so rarely make their money back. And that was a side note. So, since their goal is to get a hit and have it run for a long time and make a lot of money, they don't do a season of plays. I'll talk about what a season is in just a moment. They're looking for a hit. Broadway is the most common one. The head of the commercial theater is the producer. This is the person, usually male, unfortunately, who is in charge of getting investors. They don't they don't invest themselves. They're the ones who organizes the investors, and therefore they have a huge say on what is done. So that's the professional, the commercial theater. Not-for-profit, often referred to as the regional theater, called regional because that means it's not in New York City. So therefore, I kind of prefer the phrase not-for-profit because I don't like giving New York City its primacy as the only place to produce theater. But I don't like the not-for-profit either because that sounds a little bit lame. The people who work in the not-for-profit world are fully professional. It is professional theater. They are making their living at it. It's just called not-for-profit because the organization does not make a profit. Not-for-profit theaters are, their tax designation is a 501c3 so that you can donate to them and get a tax credit. They are fully professional. Everyone who works there, the actors, the box office staff, the designers, the directors, the staff, is making their living doing theater. They produce a season of plays. They establish a calendar at some point. They'll decide next year what are they going to produce. And they have opening and closing dates for each show. Sometimes they do extend them if it's a good show and it's selling a lot. Sure, they'll keep it running. The artistic director is the head of a regional theater. The artistic director along with the executive director. Sometimes it's the same person in smaller not-for-profit theaters. In the larger ones, they are two different people. The Oregon Shakespeare Festival is the closest large not-for-profit theater to us. Oregon Contemporary Theater is a small not-for-profit, semi-professional theater. Their goal is not necessarily to make money, although they need to make it to keep the doors open. They have more artistic goals that often work within a symbiotic relationship with the community. They might do other things other than just producing shows. They might offer educational classes for the community. They might do educational outreach where they send their actors out into the schools to work with students. They might have nights where they open the doors to a production free to, local high school students or what have you. They do this because they're probably getting a lot of tax credits from the community. So they're paying back, and they do it joyfully. You don't work for a not-for-profit if you don't want to give back to the world. Um, they have a board of directors. It's just like a corporation. A board of directors is there to advise and to have input on the way things are done. Primarily, a board of directors' job is to do fundraising. Um, so they're often well-connected people in the community who, if they don't have a lot of money, they at least have access to people who do. Um, the biggest biggest difference between not-for-profit and commercial is not-for-profits apply for lots of grants. In order to be a not-for-profit, less than 50% of your income can be earned income, which means ticket sales. So all these professional theaters all around the country, the Alliance Theater in Atlanta, the Seattle Rep in Seattle, OSF, the Mark Taper Forum in LA, all of these are huge organizations that produce tons of plays every year and spend a whole lot of money on these plays, but over 50% of their income comes from donations, be it individual donations or grants from government agencies. Corporations give donations. Next time you're at a big theater, look at the program and see all the people who have donated. It's really astounding. The next step, I don't want to say down because I'm not looking down on them, but community theater is another type of producing organization. They have an artistic director. They function much like a not-for-profit, but on a much smaller scale. They do have an artistic director. They have a season of plays. They have a board of directors. However, probably not anybody's really getting paid. The director hopefully is getting paid because in my mind, anyone who directs a show for free is a masochist. And I actually have a problem with that. It devalues the skill and the training it takes to be a good director. However, most of the actors and perhaps, and definitely lots of volunteers working backstage and box office, they're doing it for maybe a social activity, a good way to be active. These are people who have lots of experience in theater. They maybe were a theater major and then they, went on and they got a full-time regular 9-to-5 job, but they still want to stay active in it. I have seen some excellent shows in community theaters. I have seen some horribly painful shows that bruised my soul at a community theater as well. When you go to a community theater, you are not going to see actors who are earning their living by doing this. And so therefore, it just makes sense that, some of the acting and directing is not going to be as solid as it's going to be in a professional group. There are many theaters that are hybrids of a not-for-profit and a community theater. Perhaps they don't pay the actors, but they do pay their designers and obviously their directors and their staff. Community theater probably has a staff of, I don't know, depends on the size of it. There are some huge community theaters, all run by volunteers, except for those paid positions. The artistic director is going to be paid. There's probably some sort of business manager who manages the box office who is also paid. And, perhaps they have an outreach director or someone like that. But the actor, to me, the biggest designation is that the actors do not get paid. They also rely on donations. They are nonprofit organizations and you can donate to them and get a write-off on your taxes. But certainly they don't need the amount of money that the huge not-for-profits need. But they still do rely on donations. All theaters, we need a handout. Last one obviously is educational theater, done for the purpose of training the actors and designers and the students, giving them the experience and also for the education of their audience. When you pick a season in an educational environment, you are picking a balanced season that's going to be informative for your audience. So it's educational all the way around. They do pick seasons. They know, what shows they're going to do, when they're going to open, when they're going to close. They get institutional support from the college of varying degrees. Some schools get a whole lot of money from the school, and some don't get very much at all. Um, the head of the educational theater producing organization is probably the head of the theater program, who also sees, the curriculum and classes, and also probably teaches as well. But again, the purpose of the educational theater is for training. So here we are, we've looked at 4 different organizations going from fully professional to another one that is still very fully professional, but has a little bit different focus. In the commercial theater, you're going to see very commercial work, stuff that is meant to appeal to the widest range of people so that they can make lots of money. This is where you might see the very sophisticated technical elements that look flashy, the flashy shows on Broadway. And what you see in the not-for-profit is maybe it has more of an artistic edge. You're going to see shows where their purpose is not just to make money and therefore attract the widest range of audience member, that they want to produce challenging works. Incidentally, a lot of new plays are being developed in the not-for-profit world because producing a new play is very risky. So it's vitally important that the regional theaters engage in new play development. Otherwise, where would all the new works come from? You can't just write a play and give it to a Broadway producer and have it done. It's got to be tested and vetted and, probably hacked to death before it makes it to Broadway. But in the regional theater, you can have new work done, and it can be very rewarding. Community theaters, again, they can be very solid work, or it can be an exercise done primarily for the pleasure of the people on the stage. Depending on the size of the school, educational theater can be very professional quality, and a lot of professional theaters have partnerships, especially with larger theater programs around the country. The students in the program get to intern in their professional theaters, and it's a really beautiful symbiotic relationship for training. So, those are the 4 different types of theater organizations that produce theater. Again, there are hybrids, there are mixes. Some are 100% one or the other, but there can be gray areas too.